The courtroom was silent, eerily silent. You could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fans and the nervous shuffle of papers on the prosecutor's desk. All eyes were on a young black woman standing at the witness stand. She looked nervous, yes, but not broken. The prosecutor smirked, leaning back in his chair, radiating the kind of arrogance that said, "This trial is already mine." What no one knew, not the jury, not the judge, not even her own attorney, was that Maya Thompson had been holding on to something, a piece of evidence so powerful, so undeniable, that when it came to light, it would flip the entire trial upside down. From the very first day of court, Maya had been fighting not just for justice, but for respect. The case against her was shaky, built more on assumptions and bias than facts. She was accused of fraud, an accusation that carried heavy consequences. But deep down, Maya knew the real story was darker than anyone wanted to admit. She wasn't guilty of fraud. She was the target of it. And the person who should have been on trial was someone much closer to the prosecutor's team than the public realized. But none of that mattered, because in the courtroom, appearances meant everything. The prosecutor made sure to paint her as untrustworthy, emotional, and reckless. He raised his voice when speaking to her, interrupted her answers, and used sarcasm to make her look foolish in front of the jury. Every word he spoke chipped away at her credibility. Every gesture reminded the room that in his eyes, she wasn't someone worth listening to. Maya's attorney tried to intervene, objecting whenever the prosecutor crossed a line. But the damage was done. The jury had been watching Maya crumble under the pressure. Or at least, that's what it looked like. What the prosecutor didn't know was that Maya wasn't breaking. She was waiting. She knew what she had. She knew when to use it. And she knew the impact it would have. But timing was everything. If she revealed it too soon, the defense wouldn't have a chance to fully unravel the prosecutor's case. If she revealed it too late, the judge might not allow it at all. So Maya endured the taunts. She endured the belittling questions, the dismissive tone, the rolling eyes from the prosecutor's table. She endured it all because she had one thing no one else had: the truth. It happened on the fourth day of trial. Maya had been on the stand for over an hour, fielding question after question. The prosecutor was relentless, hammering her with accusations and mocking her every response. Finally, he leaned forward and said with a smirk, "Miss Thompson, isn't it true that you made all of this up to cover your own mistakes?" The jury shifted. Some raised their eyebrows. It was a heavy accusation. Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she looked straight at the judge. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "Your Honor, may I present something the court hasn't yet seen? It's a recording, one that proves exactly what I've been saying." The courtroom froze. The prosecutor immediately objected, his voice cracking with urgency. "Objection, Your Honor. This is highly irregular. This so-called recording hasn't been submitted as evidence." But the judge held up his hand. "Let's hear her out." Maya reached into her folder and pulled out a small device. With shaky hands, she placed it on the stand. When she pressed play, a grainy but unmistakable voice filled the courtroom. It wasn't hers. It wasn't her lawyer's. It was the voice of the very man who had orchestrated the fraud she was accused of, and in the background, another voice could be heard, one that sounded dangerously close to a member of the prosecutor's team. The room erupted in whispers. The jury leaned forward. Even the judge's eyebrows shot up in surprise. On the recording, the men laughed casually as they discussed how they'd pinned the blame on Maya. They joked about how easy it would be to discredit her, how no one would believe her, and how they'd walk away clean. It was damning. It was undeniable. And it was the one thing Maya had been waiting to reveal. The prosecutor's face turned pale. His smug grin evaporated. He stammered as he tried to object again, but it was useless. The evidence was clear, and the jury had heard every word. Maya's attorney seized a moment, asking the court to admit the recording into evidence and play it in full. The judge agreed, and as the recording continued, the depth of the conspiracy became clearer. By the end, the case against Maya wasn't just weak, it was non-existent. In fact, the tables had completely turned. Questions were now being raised about how such evidence had been overlooked, and who exactly had been protecting the real culprits. When the time came for the jury to deliberate, it didn't take long. Within hours, they returned with a verdict of not guilty. But that wasn't all. The judge, visibly shaken and even emotional, made a statement from the bench. He commended Maya for her bravery, for standing tall even when she was mocked and belittled. He acknowledged the injustice she had faced, not just in the case itself, but in the way she had been treated throughout the trial. For a moment, the courtroom wasn't just a place of law. It was a place of truth, a place where dignity had finally been restored. Maya's story spread far beyond the courtroom. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded with her name, and people across the country saw her as a symbol of resilience. Her courage reminded people that justice isn't always neat. It isn't always handed over easily. Sometimes you have to fight for it. Sometimes you have to endure being torn down before you can stand tall again. And sometimes the most powerful weapon you can have is a truth, recorded, undeniable, and ready to change everything. This wasn't just about one trial. This was about respect, about dignity, about a black woman who refused to be silenced, and about the moment she proved that no amount of belittling could erase the truth.